All right, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We're delighted to bring you another Daily Space Weather video here from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. If you're looking for the most detailed imagery of the sun and comprehensive daily space weather you'll find in the known universe, you've certainly come to the right place. Here is your northwestern solar limb. By the way, we may have a coronal mass ejection headed our way. We'll tell you about that a little bit later in the video. We've got a massive number of filaments and an uptick once again in solar activity. Also, if you're wondering if the sun's going to kill you today because of its alignment with Jupiter or something like that, well, you be the judge. The answer is no. There is the southwestern limb. Again, we have an increase of sunspots today, so we can expect another uptick in the radio flux and the sunspot number. We'll get to it. There's your southeastern limb. New large sunspot just rose over here. You can see that bright active region there on your screen left. And don't be left without imagery of the northeastern limb. These are all 24-hour videos. That's SDO 304 angstroms ionized helium and 193 angstroms ionized iron. Here's just the 304 angstroms by itself for the same time frame. And one of our new house favorites is this following composite. It's 171 plus 211 angstroms. Shows the lower as well as the extended coronal holes, magnetic plasma orientation. And it's pretty good at showing filaments as well. All right, so let's take a brief look here at the SDO intensity gram. We'll show you yesterday plus today's images. And the gateway has timed out. What's up with that? This is the SDO colorized magnetogram, by the way, which is still working. All right, here's our SDO intensity gram. Again, we're expecting some new named sunspot groups over here in the western portion of the Earth-facing solar disk. Also, there's a new sunspot that got named right around the equator. Once again, there's the SDO colorized magnetogram. Come on, you can play. There we go. All right, we're going to cover some information about volcanoes, but first take a moment to check out our links. If you haven't seen the links, they are part of the way that we support this channel. If you'd like to see the videos continue to exist, remain publicly visible and free for all to view, consider picking up some merch like the Croissant Earth Society merch. Yeah, the Croissant Earth Society. We're trying to offend each and every human being with our merch products. So, again, check those out. Links below the video to our Redbubble shop. If you click the link, you'll see the products in order of best selling. This is one of our newest designs, the Croissant Earth. As our regular viewers are well aware, that Earth is shaped like the French breakfast pastry. All right, so let's cover volcanoes here. Will you be having purple skies coming soon? Well, the answer is probably. Shivaluch continues to explode and produce a 28,000-foot ash plume. It's, I believe, still currently the world's most active volcano there on the Kamchatka Peninsula. Flight level 280 over Kamchatka. Flight level 050 over Subanosejima. It's a 5,000-foot ash plume. Ibu exploding. Flight level 060. It's a 6,000-foot ash plume. 14,000 feet above sea level for the flight level 140 over Semaru. Popocatépetl exploding in central Mexico, flight level 190. Not sure about Nevado del Ruiz in Colombia, but Sangay in Ecuador is exploding. That's a 20,000-foot ash plume, flight level 220. Revenador produced some effusive and explosive eruptions. 15,000 foot ash plume, flight level 150, and not sure about Sab and Kaya. And let's talk about earthquakes here. Are you expecting some purple sunrises and perhaps sunsets? Well, sulfur being injected into the stratosphere is one of the things that can create purple sunrises and or sunsets. And this article here is about the Reikoki volcano back in 2019, which I believe we covered, and I distinctly remember showing images of purple skies, sunrises at least, over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. You can expect them coming in a few days to the northern hemisphere. Again, Shiva Luch has injected aerosols, including sulfur dioxide, into the stratosphere. Also, don't forget about carbonyl sulfide. Yeah, carbonyl sulfide. Nobody who knows what they're talking about as far as atmospheric physics thinks carbonyl sulfide is going to warm the planet. It is a cloud nucleation chemical, and it is one of the many chemicals featured in volcanic eruptions. If you want to read more about carbonyl sulfide, this article is from Wikipedia. And let's talk about earthquakes. Now, a lot of people have been forecasting that, oh no, the Jupiter-Earth-Sun alignment is going to cause a major earthquake. Well, I'm waiting for it. Where is it? The alignment has already passed, folks. The alignment happened at some point yesterday, and I was unimpressed with the forecasts and unimpressed with the performance of the, quote, increases in solar activity, end quote, and the increases in seismic activity. Where is it? It's not there because planetary orbits and motions do not control the sun, and it's just ridiculous nonsense about planetary alignments. And here on the channel, we are very, very sick of hearing about planetary alignments because the predictive value is nothing. You're not forecasting anything with planetary alignments, so just stop. At least, maybe if you have a physics explanation, we'll listen. Anyway, the past 24 hours of earthquakes were fairly minor here, no major quakes, although there was a swarm around California. So keep in mind those could be foreshocks. If you're in an earthquake-prone zone, have an idea which buildings might collapse. If you evacuate yours, for example, have a bug-out bag, know what will happen in a power outage, etc. So here's the past 24 hours. We'll report earthquakes over a 5 magnitude, like this 5.6, near Papua New Guinea. That was at 12:36 Universal Time yesterday. And Philippines also had a 5.3. That was at 2:02 this morning on April 12th. Again, we do see quakes here around Southern California, including that one near Desert Center. It was pretty small, but there was a 4.4 near Cobb, California. So again, keep in mind any earthquake can be a foreshock. Don't assume because you felt one that the shaking is over. It could be a pre-earthquake indicator known as a foreshock. And let's get back to space. Here's one of the crowd favorite and house favorite wavelengths, the past 24 hours of SDO 171 angstroms. And just a quick reminder, folks, there's a lot of stuff going on the sun, that might not be super evident. So let's take a look at some other wavelengths from SDO, some of the more uncommon ones that we don't always show on the channel, such as 335 plus 1600 angstroms. So the 1600 angstroms is super interesting in that it is ionized carbon. So those bright regions that you see there, those are both rich in iron and carbon. 335 angstroms is one of the many species of ionized iron that we watch from SDO. 1600 angstroms is ionized carbon. And there's a lot of stuff going on around the surfaces of stars. So don't try to limit their ability to do things because there's certainly fusion occurring. Right there, for example. A lot of carbon. So, and we're in the process of building a spaceship right now to fly to the sun and get some nice carbon and build a carbon bike out of it. So, just so you're aware of that. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux has risen, not as much as we expected. It's now at 143 solar flux units. And that radio flux comes out of right where my pointer is, the upper chromosphere and lower corona. Here's a 1-year graph of it. The black line is the radio flux. You can see how proportional that is to sunspot number. And we can expect the sunspot number to climb a bit once again today. Radio flux also likely to climb as there are some more magnetically complex sunspot groups rotating in. So radio flux and sunspot number both to rise today. NOAA is not forecasting anything but geomagnetic calm conditions for the next 3 days. We'll talk about a possible CME strike a little bit later in the video. First, let's get through some additional solar data and some earthly data. Here is Earth's magnetic moment from space for the past 4 hours. Yeah, that's the space weather modeling framework. It's depicting magnetohydrodynamic pressure, and you can see it's a fairly low pressure environment. We've seen a slowly subsiding and early arriving coronal hole high-speed stream. So here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground for the past 4 hours. This depicts magnetic flux density, or nanotesla. That would be the units of magnetic flux density. And this imagery is great during geomagnetic storms and so on. It will show you the most likely places to see the aurora. Also, pipeline, railway, and power grid induction should be highlighted by this imagery. And if you want to share auroral images, hit us up on Instagram or Twitter. Planetary K-index is a global geomagnetism average, and current conditions are quite calm, 0.67 for the KP index, the Planetary K-index as it's otherwise known. And next we'll take a look at the measurements from Lagrange 1, the gravitational equilibrium point in between Earth and Sun, where the real-time solar wind. Also, the Soho-Lascaux is located at Lagrangian point 1. So there is the real-time solar wind, and it's fairly unremarkable here. One of the most remarkable features is this dip in the plasma temperature. That's an indication that the coronal hole high-speed stream is ending in earnest. So we've got 365 kilometers per second for the solar wind speed. Solar wind density here about 5.6 protons per cubic centimeter. And next, let's look at magnetic data. So you can see the GOES magnetometers are getting a little more smooth here. When you see a coronal hole high-speed stream, you see these sawtooth patterns, as we show regularly on the channel. Again, current conditions are a fairly normal range here. The lows are a little bit on the high side, and let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet next to see if it shows us anything as far as predictive value. So there is a South Pole current sheet rushing this way. As you can see here in red, this South Pole current sheet moving in, a possible indication that there may be some more activity in the northern hemisphere moving in. We'll keep you posted on that. And let's bring up the latest image. You can see the South Pole current sheet here somewhat accelerating there. So that could be an indication of north of the equator sunspot activity. Let's take a look at our line of sight plot next. Earth is currently close to the middle of a North Pole oriented current sheet. Solar B field depicted here in blue, and let's move to coronal holes. So there's a coronal hole view. These are holes in the sun's atmosphere, which are the source of high-speed solar wind. And we may see additional upticks here in the solar wind speed, as there may be some additional coronal hole high-speed streams on the way here. So the coming days we may see some sputtering increases and decreases. Those are all these fairly not well-organized coronal holes. Let's bring up the last image and then show the SDO last 24 hours. Those are all North Pole oriented. So we do have some North Pole magnetism way down here toward the south heliographic pole. That's North Pole. These are also North Pole and North Pole. So significant coronal holes here facing Earth. Again, expect some additional increases, and you may notice a little event. Let's let that play through one more time. You'll see a little event right here, right there. That might have been an Earth-directed coronal mass ejection. Again, we'll show that. We'll show a little more data about that here a little bit later in the video. First, sunspots. So we may see some new groups get named here. I'm not going to get hung up on the names. The most likely places to see large solar flares would be from especially 3272. Also 3276 has the capability of producing some flares, and also 3273 up here in the north central portion of the solar disk. Let's take a look at some SDO imagery. That's the past 24 hours in 131 angstroms plus SDO continuum. The continuum shows the photosphere. The 131 angstroms shows ionized iron in the corona. Let's drop the 131 angstroms and move in a little bit closer. Again, we've got an uptick in sunspot number coming today. For the most part, those major sunspot groups have been largely stable. We do see at least one additional umbra rising down here. It's not an evolution of the sunspot group. That umbra was already there when it rotated to the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Let's talk about energetic particles and flares next. As far as relativistic particles, we ain't got none. The proton flux is flatlined. We haven't seen an SEP for quite a while. Don't be surprised to see one. We've got some major sunspots right in the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Here's our X-ray flux. We did just have a significant C-class flare there. It was a C6 that occurred as we did the beginning of the show. So we'll show you the imagery of that a little bit later in the video also. And here's SDO 171 plus 131 angstroms. Another 24-hour SDO video. And how about 94 angstroms? Now, when you do see a large solar flare, one of the great wavelengths to slow things down with is 94 angstroms. We typically show 30 frames per second. And then, when we see a major flare, we typically only show the time of the flare, and then we'll show a close-up of that. Who knows what it'll do? Also, again, note this little moment right here. Right here, you're going to see a little plasma reorientation happening there. That could have been a directly facing coronal mass ejection. Sometimes they're tough to see, especially if there are simultaneous events occurring. So let's move on to talk about some more fantastic topics about space. First, let's orient ourselves. Again, Jupiter is now moving out of alignment with the Earth and Sun. So we're just waiting for all of these spooky, spooky disasters to happen. And, to all the channels out there that are forecasting it, are you going to admit you're wrong? I mean, we know you're not going to admit you're wrong because these channels do nothing but move the goalposts and attempt to gaslight their viewers that they were right the whole time. It's pretty pathetic. People getting paid millions of dollars to just straight up misrepresent all types of science. It's part of what brought us into the space weather video sphere in the first place. Another interesting article on SciTech Daily about Easy Does It. Because, well, it's a great moment to talk about how nobody in the real realm of astronomy doubts the fact that electricity plays a role in things like space weather. However, electricity and magnetism do not seem to control cosmology. That's just a ridiculous and silly idea. And anyway, there's a new project about to launch next year called the Electrojet Zeeman Imaging Explorer. So it'll be some small satellites that go up around the auroral ovals and attempt to characterize the electric currents that link Earth's aurora to Earth's magnetosphere. So that's pretty cool. That should give us some interesting science about the connection between the planet and the massive currents that flow through space. We're sort of excited about this. And if you want to read that article yourself, it's on scitechdaily.com. If you don't know what the Zeeman effect is, the Zeeman effect is the splitting of spectral lines. So when we show those SDO images, we're showing very specific ultraviolet emissions. So here's an example of the Zeeman effect. This is Mercury with no magnetic field. And then this is Mercury's spectral lines split by magnetic fields. And then there's a different type of magnetic field split there. That is the Zeeman effect. The Zeeman effect is the splitting of spectral lines. They may look blurry depending on what instrument you're using, but it's the splitting of spectral lines as a result of exposure to strong magnetic fields. So that's what the Zeeman effect is. If you want to read about that, that's on Wikipedia. Let's do a solar system forecast. And we're wondering if people are still spooked about the solar system because Jupiter and Earth. Also, we did see this too. Somebody said on Twitter, somebody was like, look, there's a 90-degree angle between Mars, Mercury, and the Sun and the Earth-Jupiter line, which is that's also extra spooky. Although there seems to be no physics to back this up. No physics to back up these doom-saying nonsensical claims. Anyway, let's advance this 1 week to show you the solar system forecast. These are facts about things that we know will occur. This is where heavenly bodies are today. There's where they'll be on April 19th as we approach April's new moon, which may arrive on 4/20th, and more about 4/20 later in the video. Let's show some coronagraphs, as we may have Earth-directed coronal mass ejections. Now, I believe that occurred just before midnight, Universal Time, and that means it might show up pretty lousily on this imagery because this splits from day to day. So that's 48 frames rather from yesterday. Certainly some CMEs there. Here are 21 more frames from today. Let me just press refresh. There we go. 21 more frames from today. And we've got to show more data here because I'm not convinced about anything based on what I've currently seen. So stereo A is located only a few degrees behind Earth there. You can see we keep showing this image every day because stereo A is about to overtake Earth and start seeing space weather behind Earth, just so you're aware of that. So it's not helping very much to help us forecast a trajectory of coronal mass ejections. However, at least it's an extra instrument in case one goes out. At least we've got the other one. So let's see if we can get a timestamp here. In fact, let's do something we never do on the channel. We're going to bring up some SDO data here for you. And I'm going to bring up the browse data. And I'm going to show yesterday plus today. And we're going to use 193 angstroms to try to get the exact time of that event. I know it was pretty close to midnight. So there it was, right there, about 2000, about 2100 Universal Time was the time of that. So let's take a look here at that time. So indeed, we do see relativistic particles. Check it out. Do we see any hitting the LASCO? Right at 2053. Could be a cosmic ray streak there. Anyway. I suspect that there is a stealthy coronal mass ejection in there, so we can expect a minor impact here mid to late day on the 15th. Anyway, let's show the 24-hour videos of our coronagraphs and SDO 193 angstroms. You can also see Jupiter there sliding across the bottom of the SOHO LASCO C2, which is in red. And if you're spooked of planets, I sincerely, I feel sorry for you. Planets are not scary. Space is not scary in general. Yes, I know. Very violent things happen in space. It's something to be spooked of. The galaxy is so spooky. Oh my God, the galaxy. It's very big and therefore spooky. Anyway, it's not going to show us very much by way of CMEs. Again, I think there's going to be a minor CME impact here, mid to late day universal time on the 15th. And let's move on to look at filaments. So this is the ground-based solar observatory at El Teide, Spain. And we do have major filaments here, all around the solar disk. All those dark absorption features and all these bright prominences. Those are all the same thing. Those are filaments suspended out in the sun's corona. Those all have the capability of producing coronal mass ejections. They could also collapse and produce smaller flares. But the point is, lots of filaments. Likelihood of coronal mass ejections, including possible additional Earth-directed ones, is very high. Also, solar flare likelihood very high. Don't be surprised to see an M or even an X-class flare before tomorrow's daily space weather video comes out. So let's take a look at the last couple of hours here, since we had a significant C-class flare, to figure out where that came from. So there's our full disk view for the past about 2.5 hours. And it looks like that C-class event came from this new sunspot that rose in the southeast. So once again, the most likely places to see large flares is up here, and right here. Let's move on to our bonus features segment. Satellite charging hazards are non-existent at the moment. That's our satellites community dashboard breakdown. GOES electron flux remains quite low. We can expect to see this rising, although it might be kind of all over the place if we do see additional coronal hole high-speed streams coming in. There's the NOAA forecast expecting flat levels, and I have no forecast for that because I can't psychically divine what the solar wind is going to do. Next, the 1-year graph, and you can see this is way down where we forecasted it a couple of days ago. And we'll show the F ionosphere layer's vibrational frequency. That's the bridge between Earth and space at about 300 kilometers of altitude. There is the F layer in megahertz. And frankly, it's looking pretty anomalously to me. So if that's meaningless data to you, that's okay. We'll show the anomalygram. After that plays through once more, there is the run, and there is the anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median depicting high-frequency anomalies in blue and low-frequency anomalies in red. And there are quite a few anomalies happening here, especially the low-frequency variety around the equatorial Americas. We'll let that play all the way through here and then show the latest image. I'm going to let that play through once more. Hopefully that will prevent you from having to use whatever software you're trying to use to view this video. Good luck with that, by the way. These videos are designed for YouTube. There's the latest image, 12:15 universal time ionogram and 12:15 universal time anomalygram. Total electron content depicts the free electrons from your GPS satellite to your handset. It's about a 12,500 mile run. Free electrons cause signal refraction. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with those distances. And here's our total electron content on a global basis. So those are the most likely places to see GPS errors. This also gives us additional insight into the Earth space system, since that's the coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model. It's the free electrons from the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt, the outer plasmasphere, the inner Van Allen belt, the inner plasmasphere, and Earth's ionosphere. And we would show the total electron content anomaly for North America, but that is not working today. So let's move on to the latest and the end of our space weather section. Anyway, we do have some sunspots here in the north. A whole line of sunspots there. And I'm losing track of the names for sure. As far as the south, there are some new spots that just rose in the past few hours, and there's another one. So expect a continued uptick in the sunspot number and the radio flux. That is probably the most likely sunspot to produce major flares. That's 3272. And there are some more sunspots over there in the west. So yeah, it's an uptick that continues. And quick side note, if your theory requires a grand solar minimum to be valid, abandon that theory. Because we're not seeing a grand solar minimum. Continuing on, we're looking at ocean currents. That's the animated portion of this imagery. And sea surface temperature anomaly. So, and the reason that we're focused on this part of the planet is because that's the planet's largest surface heat sink. Yeah, there's a lot of heat stored in all of that water, Earth's largest body of water, the Pacific Ocean. If you think mankind has the ability to heat that up or cool that down, I suggest you take basic physics, because that is just ridiculous. You are not heating up and cooling down the Pacific Ocean. Nobody is. It's a capability mankind does not have, and this idea that mankind is able to control the weather and climate in a major way, as opposed to in a tiny, tiny, infinitesimally irrelevant way, that is the arrogance of ignorance. That's the pinnacle of arrogance and ignorance about basic science. It takes thousands and thousands of years for oceans to heat up and cool down on the planet, and only less than 1% of Earth's heat latency lies in the thin, thin layer of the atmosphere. So, those are just some facts about heat latency. And of course, we do recommend that people have a high school level of physics in order to understand what we're talking about on our channel. Anyway, let's move to our regularly scheduled meteorology segment. We've got a strong low here, just to the northwest of Australia. See that fast counterclockwise rotation there? That could be hurricane force winds off the northwestern coast of Australia. And here are the jet streams of this side of the planet. Significant jet stream input there. So that making it all the way up to the 250 hectopascals pressure, which is what we use to show the jet stream daily on the channel. Next, jet streams over the U.S., and we've got some very chaotic jet streams here. We have like an S-shaped thing going on, where it's like a backward S. So huge bends in the jet stream. It's blowing backwards over the southeastern part of the U.S. there. You can see that east to west jet stream motion. Does that mean Earth's axis is going to suddenly shift and the orbit's going to switch to backwards and Saturn's rings are going to suddenly form into Nibiru and Earth is going to become a star and it's just weather, folks. It's just weather. And you're much safer than you would have been just a decade ago from natural disasters. So anyway, those are the jet streams of the Americas. And these are the surface winds. Strong winds in the northwestern Atlantic. Also some strong winds in the Gulf. Last but not least, surface winds of the central world. And jet streams of the central world. If it bleeds, it leads, and if it's nonsense, it feeds entire families millions and millions of dollars to tell you utter disinformation and nonsense on YouTube. We avoid that at the Smash News Network, the busted name in news. And let's take a look at what's going on in terms of clouds and fog over the U.S. If you think we're taking a crack at CNN by saying least busted name in news, that's 100% the case, since CNN has become the least trusted name in news to like half of the U.S. population, if not 60%. That is clouds and fog, shortwave radiation over the Americas. Next, our weather.gov map, and we've got lots of red flag warnings, and more importantly, we've got avalanche warnings over northern Utah. Huge areas of Utah there under avalanche warning. Also, these hydrologic outputs, that's snowmelt and flood advisories and additional snow coming in. So it's turning into an epic melt season exactly as we forecast. Now let's move down here to just show you the key briefly. This is weather.gov. If your location's lit, click your location. Those are too many locations for us to go into. Weather.gov. And let's look at some forecasts. Here's temperature anomaly. And large portions of the country here are going to see anomalously warm temperatures. We're stoked about it here in mid-Atlantic states, as I was spoiled in February by warm temperatures, and now it's going to be like 80 degrees in Pennsylvania. That's your temperature anomaly forecast based on the GFS 72-hour model. Keep in mind that the temperature anomaly is in degrees Celsius. Also, we've got to invite you to join us in the Lehigh Valley. Yeah, join us in the Lehigh Valley. It is one of the ultimate cycling communities in the world. So hit us up in the Lehigh Valley, and if you're stopping by, why not visit the Velo Shop? Yeah, theveloshop.net. It is my UCI trade team. So drop them a line, give Becky a call. That's shop owner Becky Quinn right there. And I can remember her back into the mid-2000s. One of the few, the proud, the chicks who was at the Thursday night training race at the end in the main group. I was like, wow, that's quite impressive. Anyway, people come from far and wide to visit our shop. Again, it is our UCI trade team as well. If you see the Velo Shop jersey out there, don't run those people over. It could be me. Theveloshop.net. Continuing on, since there's snow in the forecast for large portions of Montana especially, also Oregon, Washington, California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, North Dakota, Colorado, Wyoming, etc. You see it. That is the GFS positive accumulated snow depth change in inches for the next 72 hours. Some spring snows showing up on and including tax day. Next, we've got the pressure and precipitation forecast, and again, we've got some severe weather about to stagnate around Nolens. Yeah, Nolens. You're going to get hit, and it's looking worse than it did yesterday. 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast there showing some extreme weather around the Gulf Coast especially. Also some ice coming to portions of Canada once again. Next, this is your pressure map. We've got a huge high pressure zone here over the northern Pacific. You can see that clockwise rotation, which is consistent with anticyclones in the earthly northern hemisphere. And high pressure over most of the eastern U.S. Let's look at lightning next. And the Gulf had some extreme lightning. Also some anomalous readings showing up here. That's probably caused by electron flux on satellites. That was probably from satellite charging. And it is now off the map because reasons. Let's look at a current lightning map instead. Here we are at lightningmaps.org. Give that a minute to initialize. And no terrestrial strikes in the U.S. here, although there is some lightning in the Gulf of Mexico. If you enjoy the content and you'd prefer to see the videos continue to exist and remain publicly visible and free for all to view, consider becoming a member of the Smash team. You can find a link below the video, as well as on the homepage at smashomash.com. These videos are brought to you in part by especially Gold and Silver Smash Team members. The best value is the Gold annual paid-up subscription. There's also a Bronze membership, and we do send out email alerts since people complain about YouTube not sending them notifications about our video releases. You can find a link on the homepage of that, and welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Smashomash.com is the homepage. In 2019, a crack YouTube unit was sent to social media prison for a crime we did not commit. We promptly escaped the maximum security social media stockade to the internet underground, where we survive as producers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find the videos, maybe you can hire the Smash team. No, you certainly can. There's a link right there. Also, visit our affiliate link. There's a huge sale going on, and for orders over $250, you get one of these hot box. Yeah, you get a hot box full of all kinds of free gifts and samples and so on. It's quite good. So save 40%. Just click our link below the video for the 420 sale. And don't forget to enter the promo code SMASHOMASH to save some dough if you're just shopping on hemplucid.com, our latest affiliate/sponsor. We'll close out the video with U.S. weather. There is I pressed refresh. There is the U.S. Doppler radar map. We'll focus on the lower 48 to close this thing out. And is the browser going to crash? Keep your fingers crossed, folks. Keep your fingers crossed. And the browser indeed did crash. I think it's because the browser hates the radar.weather.gov site. I don't know any other reason, as this has been a common thing in the videos. So we'll bring that back up here. Just bear with me a quick moment. If you'd like to scroll down and press the like button, or perhaps the comment button. That way you can complain about whatever we're doing or not doing on the channel. And, my gosh, are you kidding me? Brave browser, you are a piece of work. A piece of work. Oh, man. All right. So let's just get these images up for you here and close this thing out. Ah, yes. So let us know in the comments what you're up to today. Are you wasting your life trying to get a basic browser to function? We are, for your viewing pleasure. Seriously, what the hell is going on? All right, so let's bring up the images here. Shortwave radiation and clouds and fog. I think I got them in the wrong order. There we go. Now you get to see how the sausage is made, folks. Fortunately, I'm a gamer, so I can click pretty fast. Anyway, let's try this again. There's the U.S. Doppler radar map, which is not animated because I didn't press play. Anyway, there it is. No error message or anything. How rude. And thanks for leaving a comment, Cookie Spacey. There's the shortwave radiation, which shows clouds and fog. Again, mostly clear skies over the eastern part of the U.S. And here you can see some of these jet stream interactions here. You can see how the jet stream is indeed blowing east to west. So you may see some really weird weather patterns over places like Kentucky and Tennessee. And guess what? Those are not caused by HAARP or chemtrails or any other imaginary nonsense about weather. So here's a recap. U.S. Doppler radar. Clouds and fog. And the water vapor. That should help to clear up your Doppler radar if it's not making sense to you. Thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, and may that solar wind be at your back.